Welcome to the ATP Project. You're with your hosts, Matt and Jeff. No, Steve today because we have a special guest with us who I've messed up so many times. I'm not even going to introduce her. I'll let her introduce herself.
This is Kara Saunders.
Are you sure?
Yes, 100%.
Is that correct? Oh my gosh. Look, thanks for coming on and thanks for putting up with that terrible introduction before. But good to have you on. And how are you going?
Yeah, great. It's great to be here. Super excited to make my way down and see what ATP is about, in the flesh. It's really good.
Now, you've got a huge following in the CrossFit industry. I mean, obviously, you're number 2 in the world at the moment.
Yeah.
But can you give a quick rundown on some of our listeners who might not know, who you are in terms of your what you're about, how you got started, everything about CrossFit, and what you're currently doing at the moment?
Sure. I am going to try my best to tell my shortest story, but I'm not so great at that. I was known as Kara Webb, which is where the confusion comes from, and I'm recently Kara Saunders. I started CrossFit in 2011, actually, early 2011. Just a regular person, just looking to get fit and kind of have something to do and find something positive in my life and some kind of direction in the day. And, I became a member of a local affiliate. Started doing CrossFit and absolutely fell in love with it straight away. It obviously, on a physical level and a hormonal and emotional level, it was really great because I was exercising and that felt great. But more than anything, it kind of gave me purpose and something to keep working on every single day, which is something that I thrive on. 2011, I was just doing sort of regular classes like anyone. We have what we call the open. So in the competitive world of CrossFit, it starts with an open, which anyone in the world can participate in. I had no idea what it was, but it sounded pretty cool. So I jumped in, I did it, it was amazing, and I accidentally qualified after a couple of months for the regional level, which was
accidentally?
The next day. Yeah. So
after how long? After
like
starting
3 months or so.
Wow.
Now, in saying that, the sport was definitely nowhere near as evolved back then as it is now. So it was very brand new, and it was possible to do that. It's not so possible now. You have to be a pretty exceptional human to be able to do that and get through to that stage these days. But I rolled with it, and I went down to Sydney, competed in the regionals, was very humbled. I placed 19th, didn't think much of it. It was just a cool experience and came away pretty sore and, feeling sorry for myself.
Yeah.
Got back into training, kept loving it. It was the best part of my everyday. Come around 2012, did the same thing, same open process. Placed 5th in the country and went, oh,
wow,
I've gotten kind of good in 12 months. I've improved. This is really cool. Went to the regional level and I won. And I was like, I don't know how this happened. This was an accident. I've just been doing what I love every single day.
So you were like genuinely surprised that you won?
Genuinely, 100%.
You didn't think that was...
No, it was 100% off guard. It was not even on my radar. Placing 5th in that first stage, I was like, as each week progressed. So the competition, the open stage is 5 weeks. And you have one event to do in your gym each week for 5 weeks. Mm-hmm. And as the weeks went on, I was like, I'm doing pretty well. And then by the end of it, I placed 5th. I was like, this is amazing. Even top 10 is such a feat. And I still barely had any idea what I was doing. I was just practicing something that I really enjoyed. And then I went to the regional level and I loved it. It was...
And the regional is how many? Is just the states within Australia, or is it New Zealand as well?
Yeah, so back in 2012, I think it was just the Australian it was Australia and Asia, I'm going to say. Asia. And since then, our region has evolved, and it's now called the Pacific region, and it includes Russia and a few other... and New Zealand.
Russia's in the Pacific?
It is now, yeah. So back then, I think in 2012, I think it was Australia, New Zealand... and maybe Asia was in it as well. I won it, and it was totally off guard. I thought, man, this is never going to happen again. It's just a fluke. It's really cool. Yep. It still took me a couple of years to understand that it wasn't a fluke. Yep. And then, I went to the CrossFit Games for the first time in 2012. Ironically placed 19th there, which is what I placed the first time I went to the regional level. And that was super scary and emotional. And
so the first time you went to the CrossFit Games was in 2012?
Yeah.
And where did you finish?
19th.
19th?
Yeah.
In the world?
In the world,
Which
yes.
is pretty outstanding. And so, and again, I know that a lot of your fans are going to be listening to this podcast, but
Yeah.
for our normal listeners who might not know what CrossFit is, and see, for you guys, you'd be living under a rock. But I mean, it's the discipline of almost like Olympic lifting, but then you've got like cardio as well too. So like, it's kind of crazy. It's a crazy sport. It's a great sport because it's multi-discipline, right?
Totally. So simply put, our goal is to be physically capable in every domain. So we want to be as fast as we are strong. We want to be able to work out for a long period of time or a short period of time. To be able to, be agile and coordinated and balanced, but, incredibly strong and powerful and, skillful. And we want to be just the exception. Our goal is to be so well-rounded to just transform ourselves into like an exceptionally capable human being in every aspect.
And this is one of the things that I personally find fascinating about CrossFit, because when I deal with supplementation and protocols, like you deal with bodybuilders, I deal with endurance athletes, we deal with all these things. Most of the supplements are actually made for either bodybuilders or endurance. So trying to create a supplemental regime or a protocol for a CrossFit athlete that has to move across, and you don't actually know what's going to happen, really, do you?
No. And, we were just talking about this before, that it is quite tricky in the world of supplementation. And that's where, someone like myself, I've really taken it upon myself to be educated on what I need in different aspects. So, what do I need to do to support the fact that I've been involved in an endurance event in the morning, and then I need to somehow get myself prepared for like a really heavy event in the afternoon, so to lift a heavy barbell. And there's such different components, and you have to look at the preparation for the event, then you have to look at what needs to be done after the event to not only recover from the nature of that, but to be prepared for something entirely different. Then you look at it as a whole endurance piece of the fact that we actually compete for 4 to 5 days straight.
Nuts.
So that is an endurance event in itself. Is that whole exactly, coming back the next day and the next day.
Do you weigh yourself like your body weight? But in a day, how much body weight would you lose in a day? Of course, it depends on the event.
It can be quite significant. So I do weigh myself every day, and ever since I started working with a nutrition coach, I weigh myself every day. It's a really, really good indication of just what's going on, hydration-wise is huge. That's probably the main reason that I do it. A lot of people sort of go, do you have to be in a particular weight range to compete or whatever? No, I know where my sort of homeostasis sits. I know what works for me in that balance point. So I stay, on point with that, but that's very different to somebody else. But so I weigh myself in pounds because it's just much more accurate, and my nutrition coach is in the US, so that helps.
Lots in pounds,
but yes, I think from day one till the last day of the games, and it was sort of, like a working week, essentially it was about 5 days, I think I dropped maybe about 6 to 7 pounds.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And that was last year?
That was last year, yeah.
And that's where you had your best result,
That's
which
where
was...
I had my best result, yeah. And throughout...
Number 2.
Yeah, number 2, yeah. And throughout those days, I was monitoring it closely. I don't stress about it, but I definitely try and keep track of it. I don't want to drop weight over those days. I want to try and maintain it as best as possible.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. If you see a big drop in weight, do you actually quickly change your protocols to try to reload and get that weight back up, thinking that weight's going to be associated with like water and sugar and salt that's held in your body?
There's it's one indicator, and there's a lot of other things that I measure. Like I do pay attention to things like swelling in particular areas, and if I notice things like that, then I will definitely make an adjustment. But I usually use that's one marker. Sometimes I'll drop weight, and for instance, after regionals, after this competition, I dropped a few pounds within a couple of days. There was not another marker that gave me any indication that anything was wrong. My energy was really great. My sleep was the same. I didn't feel crashing. My performance was fine. I wasn't ridiculously starving. I dropped a lot of stress as soon as regionals was done. And so I all of a sudden, like, my gut felt good and I felt light. And so it was obviously just a little bit of stress weight that I was holding throughout the competition and in the lead up. I dropped that, and then, I've qualified to the final stage. I'm great. I'm excited. So I know I don't need to worry. And that just comes down to really paying attention to your own body and just getting to know yourself. There's certain things that I know where I'm like, oh, I've dropped weight. This is not okay. Yes, I need to up something.
What are those things? I mean, so if you look at weight, so you go, okay, my weight's dropped.
Yep.
And I know that's kind of probably, visceral, holding fluid from stress, or inflammation from injury or gut or something like that.
Yep.
But there's do you do any sort of ways of measuring the difference between intracellular or extracellular water, or where? What do you do? Other measurements all over your body?
No, I once a week I do measure my around my chest and things like that. When I check in with my nutrition coach, we do those measurements during competition. No, I'm kind of a little bit home brand, I guess. I don't have any real scientific methods that I use. That's
and you don't
just
add stress either.
No, I don't want to overcomplicate anything. I just try and use my intuition, and that just comes from years and years of being an athlete and reading and getting to know myself. And the energy and sleep are probably the biggest ones, and then what's happening with my gut. Usually my belly tells me, I always am your gut knows what's up. That's sort of the thing I kind of go by, and if it sort of feels off or digestion changes or whatever, then I know something's not quite right. And there's a few things like that, but for the better part, I've gotten myself to a point where I've practiced what I eat, when I eat, and how much fuel my body needs to achieve a certain result. That does take practice.
Yeah.
And it's very, very different for every individual. What foods work for me, and the timing is going to be very different, even to my hubby or to anyone. So that's all I sort of do. And then I notice I might be a little bit swollen. I won't really swell in competition. That's usually afterwards. And it's definitely a balancing act. There's definitely a little bit of an art to it, but I just try and stay in tune.
Yeah.
Can you share with us what you eat? I don't want to give away too many secrets or anything, but if there's a thing that your breakfast of a champion, or between events through the day, what you feel works for you? Or?
Yeah, so my key components that I use, I don't go off hunger too much. I do more so in my normal life, but in a competition is a little bit different. In competition, it's about hitting particular numbers and achieving a certain level of energy. I don't worry if I'm feeling hungry. That doesn't matter as long as the energy is there. The hunger could be thirst. It could be anything, It's kind of just a cue. But I work off low and high volume foods. That's something that I use that's really important. I don't ever want to put too much food, so high volume food, in my gut where it has to work too hard. I need that energy for other systems when I'm competing, not having to struggle and work through my GIT and overwork there. So I tend to hit say on a competition day, I'll hit a big heavy breakfast, I'll kind of set the day big carbs, big protein, pretty decent on the fat, depending on when we're starting though, depending when the first event starts. And then I usually work more so with carbs and protein throughout the day and a little amount of fat, and then I'll hit more protein and fat before bed. And that seems to work really well. I'll have more high volume food, so I still want to get my veggies in. That's really, really important. I can't really process that. I don't want to be loading up with cruciferous vegetables and things like that in the middle of a comp day. But I'll do that before bed, and I'll have all of those kind of things.
Although crop dusting some broccoli behind you might actually help, wouldn't it?
Well, most of them are in your wake, so that kind of can be quite a good...
You take that. Because I know it's all a community and you're all friends, but there must be someone you want behind you.
Yeah, that's right. We're all out for that top spot, right? But and then I have my hero foods, a few adjustments that I make coming close to a comp day or in season. I'll eliminate any foods that I consider extra work for my body. So, I went as far as having a food intolerance test done a few years ago, finding any markers that essentially, I might not necessarily be lactose intolerant or anything like that, but anything that my body considered hard work that it sort of reacted to slightly, it's just energy that's wasted that I could put somewhere else. So I will strip those things out. I'll reduce, even gluten will start to get taken out more and more, and I'm not heavy on it anyway. I do eat very well and very basic. I'm a fruit and vegetables and meat kind of girl. but I will.
Cooked or raw?
Pardon?
Cooked or raw?
Cooked.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely cook everything.
It's a lot of energy wasted trying to cook the food inside your stomach.
Totally. So it's all about reducing the strain, reducing the workload, through my GIT. So essentially I have the energy to use to perform.
I know that in the CrossFit community, Paleo was really, really big.
Yes.
Do you subscribe to the Paleo or not really? Or kind of a bit?
I love components of it. And I think every diet plan or whatever you want to call it has value. But I think what it comes down to is understanding your own body, and everybody's a little bit different. Mm-hmm. For me, if I consume high amounts of fat, I'm a little slow. I don't work so well off that. I tend to work a lot better off a higher carb diet, good carbs, of course. I eat a lot of vegetables, less fruit, but I still eat fruit and veggies all the time. Whole foods work really well for me, and a little bit less on the protein side of things, mm-hmm. And a little less on the fat. And that's how my body likes it to be. Mm-hmm. My digestive system has always been my weakest component, and I've understood that from a very young age. My mum's exactly the same, so I like to keep it really simple. Paleo is just a little too heavy, a little too hard for me, but it holds a lot of value elsewhere. I like the concept of keeping things simple and real and whole, but then in the way of like the actual macronutrients, I think that needs to be assessed on an individual basis.
So you said that there's a few foods that you have, or you like to keep things basics. What are the foods that you have which don't agree with you, and what does that do for you?
I don't eat anything dairy. I made that choice to cut that out a little while ago. There might even be like certain vegetables, like even something as simple as like cauliflower. Like I love it and I'll eat it a lot like normally, but I'm not going to eat it during competition. I keep things very basic in the way of like I'll eat sweet potato and really clean, simple, basic protein. So I cut my protein back. If I'm having actual like meat, like I'll stick to seafood. My body loves seafood. So like I could eat fish all day, every day, and I feel so light and I just feel balanced and I'm not having to work too hard. And then I'll have more of my protein, like to take the load off actually digesting like my protein powder instead of actually having to digest as much like whole, complete meat sources, I guess. I still try and rotate it a little bit during competition. I don't want to then not eat red meat because I do like the benefits I get from having that at certain times and getting the iron from that meat. So I create a little bit of a balance, but no additional crazy flavors or anything added. It's bland. It's kind of like old people food, typical like how your like great grandparents eat, like steamed and boiled veggies and or roast veggies are my go-to because I can leave them unattended for a long time when I'm busy. And you can cook them just about anywhere. I'll add more rice and things like that in competition just because it's low volume again. So big, heavy hitter on the carbs, but low volume in my belly, and I feel like I don't have to work for it.
So before you tried the no-whey protein, which obviously you're taking at the moment, what protein powders were you using? Were you using a rice or a pea, or were you using WPI?
I'd used everything. So I'd gone from a WPI years ago, didn't really understand. There were sort of times where I thought it wasn't agreeing with me, but I kind of like didn't acknowledge it as much as I do now. Then I realized, and I knew something was up, and then I had my food intolerance test, and I said, don't have that. So I was like, okay, that's going straight away. I'm trying to be the best in the world. And
how many years ago was that?
That would have been 2 years ago, I think. And maybe like 18 months. And, I want to be the best in the world. Those 1%ers are huge, and they all add up. So take that out. I tried every protein under the sun. So I went into every store, and I tried rice, I tried pea, I tried everything, and some were kind of okay. I found that more often than not, the rice or pea proteins were taking me a really long time to adjust to. So I felt quite heavy and bloated, and they weren't something I particularly wanted to drink. I was okay adding them into, say, like morning oats or something like that. But they're a little bit heavy on me. And then obviously when I tried the no whey, it was just easy. It felt like really easy. Like and to drink, it's probably the only protein now that I can drink because it's not heavy,
Yeah.
and like I said, it's all about not putting any additional strain or load on your digestive system so that you can repair what you've just done to your, your energy system, your muscular system. And so, that's obviously why I landed there. And it's like, I can have that. It's like I've just had a glass of water, but it's doing the job that it's supposed to do with obviously all the added benefits of having collagen. So
with some of those benefits, this is the coolest thing. If your gut is a weakness, the collagen's the best because it actually helps to regenerate the gut wall, and it's the leaky gut wall that makes you intolerant to a lot of these other things. But for the collagen-based protein that no whey uses a peptide called Body Balance, which was studied against whey directly. One of the cool things associated with important for CrossFit was in our muscle tissue, we've got like somewhere between 6 to 10% of our muscle tissue is actually connective tissue.
Yeah.
Now, that connective tissue in our muscle generates about 30% of our muscle power. So even though of the infrastructure, the connective tissue itself is less than 10%, but 30% of the power actually comes from the leverage of the connective tissue, not the muscle. And so for CrossFit, being able to use that was amazing. Now, with the collagen directly feeding that connective tissue, there's nothing in the wheys or the other vegetable proteins that does anything at all for the connective tissue, which is why when they studied whey in direct comparison, now what's cool, they did 15 grams of this Body Balance, compared it up to 80 grams of whey. And what they found over 3 months training, they had, I think it was 3.8, from memory, this is off the top of my head, 3.8 times the amount of power gains from your training using collagen compared to whey.
Oh, yeah.
Which so for CrossFit, I mean,
It's
Ollie
huge.
lifting, it's
It's huge.
Yeah,
It's the
15
gold
grams.
standard.
I mean, seriously, of your protein allocation, if you put 15 grams of that protein allocation per day as Body Balance, you're going to get more gains than if you didn't. And we're talking about 3 or 4 times the amount of power, muscle gain, fat loss, and everything compared to other protein sources because of that function.
But what's really interesting for me, and again, Matt's a scientist, so when he brings this information to me and we're looking at the market segment that we're looking at bringing these products into, I immediately thought CrossFit and Ollie lifters for this.
Totally.
He didn't,
what's really...
He said lips, my cheeks. What's it going to do with my little crows?
Can it improve my calves? Yeah, but one of the things, nothing can help. That's a lost cause.
Synthol for the calves.
Yeah. But what it came down to, though, was that there was some negativity, which obviously at ATP we're trying to overcome, not so much in the CrossFit community because a lot of the guys are into paleo, but with a lot of the bodybuilders or people that are looking for power and strength, they consider collagen to be inferior. And when you compare it against whey, pound for pound on amino acid level, normal collagen is. But Body Balance is actually a peptide which actually upregulates PPAR and mTOR. So it's actually helping, especially with the mTOR. It's actually doing a better job than leucine, which collagen is relatively low in, at actually building muscle fiber. It's actually 300% more. So a lot of guys in the community, the CrossFit community, might be using collagen, and that is good because it's good for the gut and it does help with connective tissue, but not like...
But just hydrolyzed collagen it's not that flash in the sense that hydrolyzed collagen just gives you an amino acid spectrum that'll go into your body. Your body might take some to build some cartilage, add to some collagen bits, but otherwise it just adds to your amino acid. The difference with a no-whey is actually the peptides because they go and have like a drug-like effect in your body before they're broken down and release the aminos. So that's kind of really cool.
Yeah, and I think that's where it's really important, and that comes back to the athlete themselves in actually taking the time to educate themselves on these things.
We were talking about that downstairs.
Yeah, we were totally talking about this, and like I would say start off trialing products and you do a little bit of research and you find something, you go, oh, this actually feels good. And then, like I listen to this podcast all the time. I sit on my bike for an hour and I listen to a podcast. It's perfect. And then when you hear all of these things and you take it upon yourself to actually become educated on what you're consuming, you sort of are open to all of these other possibilities, and that's where the difference is made. And, I think it's definitely important. Athletes need to start understanding that. And, I work off a macro-based diet. So, like, I count my macronutrients for a particular result, but it goes beyond that. You have to look at what is behind those macronutrients. It's not just numbers.
Is that macronutrients diet? Is that something that James's partner is doing? Is that
Yes.
What's her name?
Kayla.
Yeah. So Tony's actually just reached out. She didn't even know that it was James's partner.
Yeah,
so this
right.
is like basically looking at macro.
Yeah.
You know. So do you want to give us the theory behind that?
Yeah. So pretty much like the way that I have always been really, really excited about nutrition. I actually studied nutrition. I didn't finish it. Long story. I became an athlete pretty much. Like, and I took some. Yeah, I know. But
well, you're busy conquering the world. I was,
I know. I kind of just
find 5 minutes.
rode my wave, and it changed a little. So, but I've always been really excited about it, and I always was very holistic, and I loved food science, and I loved learning about what it could do, and then how essentially I could thrive, like how I could live the best days possible. That it just excites me about food science, and I always loved it. But as an athlete, what I didn't understand was the sports nutrition side of things.
Yeah.
And so I was eating all these amazing foods, and, I was educated on that, but I was just kind of missing the mark in my performance. And so I asked for help, and I work with a company called Working Against Gravity in the US.
Yep.
And Adi is my nutrition coach, and she kind of, they work off a macro diet, and it's about actually obviously balancing out the macronutrients to achieve a certain amount of recovery, and like to perform it a certain way, to have a certain amount of energy, to burn a certain amount of fuel, and to teach your body how to use what when.
That's cool.
And to sustain something like a 5-day massive competition. And so then I started implementing the two. So I was like, I have this knowledge of there could always be more, but I have a certain amount of knowledge and excitement about good food and about good nutrition more so. And then now I have an understanding, and I've educated myself over the last, 12 to 18 months in the sports science side of things. And then I've tried to marry the two. And now finally I've kind of like ended up in this really beautiful place where I understand my body, I know the energy it needs, and then I have the certain foods and the nutrition and the supplements that I value. And it's just... And then your body just kind of like, it just settles and finds this really beautiful, like just level where it's not hard work anymore, and you have energy for every day to compete through workouts, don't get sore, like everything's just how it's supposed to be,
Yeah, wow.
Yeah,
That's cool.
Yeah, it's great. And it was so exciting to start. I didn't even understand that I was missing the mark so much until I became a little bit more calculated, and understanding that I needed a particular amount of fuel. Yeah, not just certain micronutrients, but I needed a certain amount of calories in a certain way to actually sustain the amount of work that I was doing.
And then understanding that some of those calories may have things that we're putting a handbrake on. So once you realise that these allergy... Now, did you do IgG and IgA testing?
Yeah, I can't remember the exact... I went and saw a naturopath that I was working with at someone...
About intolerances and
Yeah, they did the little finger prick and just did they test like 300 and something or 500 and something or whatever, different things, and you look at your blood, and you kind of see what the cells that are angry and all those kind of things, and it's really basic. And I've recommended pretty much anyone I've come in contact with, if anyone asks me, I've got this going on, I'm like, go get it tested, go find out about your body, what it wants and what it doesn't want, and then fuel it right.
So what was, I don't mind giving them a bit of a plug if they're friends of yours. So what's the name of the company in the States that you're dealing with?
Working Against Gravity.
Working Against Gravity.
Yeah,
so just
they
Google
call themselves
that.
WAG.
Yep. Cool.
They have nutrition coaches, and they go through, and you kind of do a process of, they get to know you. It takes months, it took a really long time, and I took a huge gamble, and I built this relationship with my nutrition coach, and we tried to get to know my body. And my main advice for anyone doing anything like that is give as much feedback, take notes and give as much feedback as you possibly can.
Yep.
If you want somebody to help you, you need to help them build a clinical picture. So, take notes of every symptom, every feeling, whatever happens, and they can help you so much better, and you'll get so much more out of it. A lot of people are not giving the information over, and then, the therapist or whoever you're working with is unable to give you their best service.
And this is important. See, we tell a lot of people to go do this testing. We talk to people about symptom picture and tell them to go work with a naturopath and doctors. They're forever coming back saying, they just won't do the testing. They just want to put me on a detox or something. We've recently made the testing available on the webpage. They say on our webpage. So if someone wants to go see a practitioner, or they want to go work with these people, they can actually go and get their allergies tested, intolerances tested, get that data. organic acid profile, for example, you can measure every step of your Krebs cycle and find out what waste you make and whether that waste is coming from bugs in your guts or whether it's coming from a Krebs cycle defect
Amazing.
from your brain. So when you get those sort of information, and they are good, but they are useless without your symptoms.
Yeah. Yes.
So if someone doesn't give the symptom picture, we don't know if this thing's high in your blood because you're resistant to it, or we don't know if it's high in your blood because it's a toxic issue. So the symptom picture, no blood test or any test makes any sense without the symptom picture.
Yeah.
And anyone that doesn't ask for your symptom picture and works by numbers is not actually treating a person, they're treating a system.
Exactly.
So what you're doing is absolutely perfect, explains why you're going to get results. You know?
And we're all so different, and I think you can chase your tail your entire life and be ignorant and not be willing to find out that information, but it's just so easy. For me, I'd rather do what I need to do, find out exactly how I'm made, and like, this is me, okay, this is what I work with.
Yeah.
And then straight away take action and I live a good life. It's that easy.
And that's when you get predictable results. Now, in that situation, you take away these handbrakes, you take away these variables that might be getting in the way of you achieving a result. Then when we give you a supplement or you go on a supplemental program, you can get predictable results. And if you don't get the results you expect, then you can assess your supplementation. Go, that may not have been right for me.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, you're trying something, you go, oh, was it the supplement not working, or was it that I was just having too much dairy?
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I'm kind of stuck in this limbo zone where I'm not awesome.
Yeah.
So it's all about, and this is what I love about athletes, and when I used to treat a lot with the general public, the difference between the wellness and performance industry versus a sickness industry was how many variables these people had or how much understanding of their own body they had.
Yeah.
Once you work out what's holding you back and you remove those things, we can then focus on pushing the accelerator and expecting to go forwards.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Yeah, totally agree.
So, Kara, take us back to where it all started for you. So, I mean, can I ask, how old are you now?
I'm 28.
20. Oh, so young.
I know.
As you got, so, I mean, and in terms of prime for a CrossFitter, what is the pinnacle? Is it now? Is it in 2 years? Is it 2 years ago? I mean, because everyone's different. I mean, coming down to your biological age, you know what I mean. So are you in your prime now?
I am, yeah.
Yeah.
I
You're at the peak of your powers.
Yeah, totally. I think it definitely, as our sport, there are so many components, right? Like I said, we aim to be good at everything and physically capable, and you have to, we try and create this like superhuman out of ourselves as best we can and maximize our potential. And it's amazing. It's such a cool journey, but it takes time.
Yes.
And it takes time to get to know yourself, to prevent injuries, and you're going to have little setbacks along the way, but to build a certain foundation of strength, and to sort of have, and then to also develop the skills. People think that CrossFit is very much you walk in, you go crazy hard, and do crazy things. Don't get me wrong, we do that sometimes too,
Sure.
a lot too, but there's a lot of skill behind it. Skill takes time.
Yeah.
You might do gymnastics as a child for 10 years and you still haven't mastered, particular skills. So there's a lot involved, and it definitely takes time, and I think I'm only getting better and better with age.
Yeah.
I think it depends on the external influences as to how long your career is. And it's things like this, something like nutrition and your general overall picture of health, that can really contribute to the longevity of, your career as an athlete. If you don't take care of yourself, like I've had injuries before, and the first thing I go to, say I've broken bone in 2015.
How'd you do that? Drop a plate or something? Or
No, it was actually like a progressive loading thing. It was like an instability that I'd had from a child that I didn't know about.
Right.
Training really hard. I'm in season, I didn't know, and then it's broken. So
wow, what bone?
My back. So it was like a part of my back, and it was, pretty hectic, but the first thing that I turned to, obviously I go and see a physiotherapist and I figure out what's going on. And then I'm like, okay, my body needs to heal. What do I do? So I go to my overall health picture. So I go straight to nutrition, pull anything that's going to create any inflammation, make sure my gut is amazing so anything that's going in is actually being assimilated and is working. And I was able to go and compete when I shouldn't have been able to,
How long did it take you to recover?
Well, I found out about that 6 weeks before I competed, and I competed and I was fine. I went through the next level.
And what was the prognosis?
I placed 5th at the CrossFit Games that year.
So that was 2007?
15. That was 15.
That was 15. You
and
finished fifth. Wow.
I had like another unfortunate event. I suffered heat stroke that year, and that was sort of the main contributing factor to me maybe not placing a little higher, but still It was amazing. And like I was as healthy as I could possibly be, you know.
Wow.
So they're the things that I kind of like go to, and that definitely contributes to how long you can compete for. Then, of course, you've got being a female athlete is a little bit different. It's a little bit
I've never competed as a female athlete.
No, it's a little different.
Matt has.
Yeah.
He enjoyed it. He smashed him too. Actually, you would kill him. Like, you wouldn't stand a chance against
Well, it was Greco-Roman wrestling. Had a flies eyes incident. And
Actually, that's the thing my wife loves about the CrossFit as well too. It's pretty much exactly the same. It's the same number of reps. I mean,
Yes.
and the weight is based effectively on a percentage of weight. Like, that is probably one of the best things in terms of equality in sport that you can actually
Totally.
see. Anyway, sorry, keep going.
Yeah. So like that is obviously something like as a female athlete you have to consider. Our genetic makeup doesn't necessarily take naturally to that level of exertion, say that a male would, and that's just chemistry. It's not a limiting factor. It's not a no. It's not a roadblock. It's just a thing.
Yeah.
You have to work quite hard to balance your hormones, and that's really important to me to make sure that my body is still functioning as a woman and still being able to compete at a high level. So that's a huge factor in making sure that you can control all of these things. I think because I'm aware of those, that's what has me in my prime 7 years later, you know, that's what kind of gives you that longevity in the sport. But yeah.
So just coming back to the injury just quickly. So you were back in 6 weeks. How long were you expected to be out under conventional, what are they saying?
You know, like you would normally have to lock yourself down. Like I wore like a soft bracing mechanism. Normally you'd like wear a firmer one, but like I did whatever I needed to do. I prioritized sleep, all those kind of things. But it would have, you know, you'd normally have to lock yourself down for a period of time. It varies, but to then compete doing the things that I was doing, you know, not just like, it wasn't just basic exercise anymore. It's like, okay, now you have to push the limits out in front of people and all of those kind of things, and then, you know, still perform for like 5 days straight or whatever and do crazy, lift heavy things and do all of that. And I honestly believe that it's because of the choices that I made. Obviously I had an amazing support crew with my physios looking after me and treating my body externally, but I did so much internally that contributed to my healing process being so much faster.
Hey, I'm really curious. I'm going to have to ask. You're talking about hormones before. What part of your menstrual cycle are you the strongest? Have you noticed a link?
Yeah, so like just after, so like around ovulation.
Yeah.
So that's like the peak.
You want to know why? Because I was hoping you would say that.
Yeah.
It's all to do with the collagen again. Because what happens in that first half of your cycle, as the estrogen comes out, it's telling your body to make all this collagen to build a period.
Yeah.
But all over your body, your collagen gets tougher, stronger, and more abundant. As you're coming into your period and your hormones are dropping, so those days before the period and during your period, while your hormones are at their lowest, what happens is all your immune cells are released to eat up all your collagen all over your body. So they go down and break down all your connective tissue, and then you lose your elasticity. And interesting, women's feet are longer at ovulation than they are during their period, slightly, because of the support to the collagen. And then hormones are also anti-inflammatory. So again, around that mid-cycle, we just got to...
We just got
to
to
get them dates
to
around
yeah,
that. When
exactly.
does this world do?
We'll have a chat to them, Matt.
Oh my gosh, it makes so much sense. Like I say to Maddie, and so like I fell into that time of month like in the 2016 games, and I had no reason. Like my body was like good to go and everything, but I just performed like shit. Like it was just bad. And I was like, I don't know, like I've got nothing. Like I'm like, everything is good. There is no adversity. My placing dropped, and I'm like, it's just unfortunate, but that's just timing, like as a woman, and you just hope that it doesn't happen. Yeah. But you know, like if you can compete at a time of ovulation, it's huge.
Yeah,
I got some tricks. We'll screw.
I was going to say.
Yes,
just give me the dates. We'll work it out.
Yeah, I was going to say. Yeah, if we, I mean, obviously, I don't know too much about this, but I know with when you're going on your honeymoon. I mean, of course, if you're using the pill, then you just obviously take a little bit different. You do it that way. But are there natural ways, Matt, that you can sort of delay or push forward?
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah,
just
cool.
Screw around with the hormone load, and in particular progesterone. The progesterone's the one that holds it in and keeps the hormone load high. And it's the same from progestation.
So then once you know the date, start working backwards, and we'll create a protocol for you.
Yeah, we screw around with it.
Yeah. We'll increase your performance by 3%. Yeah, that'll be awesome.
And the length of your feet, so don't trip. Just be aware of that.
So
I'll call them now, change my shoe size.
Yeah, do it.
So where did it start for you? I mean, when you were young, were you a talented, were you a netballer? Were you a what gymnast were you? What were you doing?
So-
what did you like? Swimming, tennis?
Yeah, so I swam. I grew up in a
I think
house.
I remember reading that somewhere.
Yeah. So I pretty much spent my whole entire life. It was just my mum and I, and we lived. My mum, like being a single parent, she had to work all the time, and we lived across the road from my school, and so essentially swimming was kind of like my babysitter. It was a way that like I had something to do. Like she wanted me to have purpose at the start of the day, and so I could get myself up. I had to learn to set an alarm clock and get myself up and walk myself over to the pool and be physically active, and then I could do the same in the afternoon, and it keeps me out of trouble, keeps me tired, and probably a well-behaved kid for a single parent, so that's a really good thing. And obviously
discipline too. Yeah, that's
totally. So it was amazing for so many reasons. I was really, really competitive, just instinctually.
Naturally you had that killer instinct.
I just wanted to win. I loved it. I thrived. It was very, very internal. Like looking back now, I spend a lot of time now as a professional athlete looking back and realizing how internal it was and how driven I was. And then I got into high school, so I swam, like kind of at a Met North sort of like level, and I wanted to go to the Olympics, had these big aspirations, got into high school, all those teenage hormones kick in, and you just become a pain for your parents, and, like everything's just difficult, and you just become trouble. And so I did that. I did all those normal teenage things, stopped swimming because it wasn't cool, and, did whatever. And then it wasn't until, so I did nothing all through high school. Then it was like year 12 and you're like, oh, I'm graduating. Okay, fine. I'll get involved in like sports carnival or whatever. And I did it. And I was like, oh man, that was really fun. Like that was actually pretty good. And I was actually pretty good at what I was doing still. Anyway, let it go, turned 18, did all the silly stuff all over again, like going out, drinking, carrying on, being 18. This is all really exciting. I didn't last too long. I went pretty hard and it was pretty short-lived.
Yep.
And I turned to my mom one day and I said, I feel really crappy. Like, I don't feel really good. Like, physically I feel gross. Mentally I feel flat. I feel like I don't have any direction. Like, I don't know what to do. And she said, come to the gym with me. Come and do some exercise. That was her answer. It was like, come and be physically active and like, let's get you into it. You've got something to turn up to every day. Chemically it's obviously going to work really well. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. Let's do it. Like, I feel terrible. From that minute, I just stopped going out. I went to the gym. I fell in love with it. I started becoming really competitive again. Like, I just wanted to keep, I can do 50 today. I want to do 60 tomorrow kind of thing, Yeah. And then it just kind of kept going from there. And I sort of just had this little break through, that kind of teenage phase, and then just picked up and sort of found myself again. And that kind of... I was put in an environment where I could be competitive again, and then I've sort of just run with it ever since.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so how did you transition from there? Somebody introduced you. I think I remember reading, was it a PT or something like that? Introduced you to CrossFit and said, give this a crack, you might like it.
Yeah. So my mum was seeing a PT at the time, and she said, look, I said, I don't know what I'm doing and whatever. And she said, look, her reasoning was, get someone to help you out, and it's going to help keep you accountable. It's going to give you a certain time and a reason to go somewhere every day. It's going to be really positive. There's nothing bad that can come from that. And so I did that, and he then found CrossFit and was introduced to that, had kind of gained an understanding of how I ticked, and then
so this is 2011?
Yeah. Maybe 2010 that he kind of like found it. And then said, hey, I think you're going to like this. Let's try a couple of these style workouts. I'm like, oh, man, that's cool. Like, that's really fun.
What was it, though?
Yeah, I was going to say,
what was it about CrossFit that because you said earlier and you just fell in love with it. What was it? Was it the burpees?
No, the first workout I did is like my worst nightmare. It was like running and wall balls, and it was terrible. But it was, I think for me, I need to be physically active to be level. Like, I naturally have quite a lot of energy, and I think a lot, and I turn over in my head a lot. So if I don't exert some of that energy, I can kind of send myself a little crazy. I can become anxious. So I need to do that. And then it was also, because it was so complicated and I had to learn at the same time, it was constant mental stimulation. So it was physical, this perfect balance of physical and mental at the same time. And that became addictive for me, that constant sort of moving forward in both of those areas. And then you just naturally get that, feel good after exercise kind of thing going on. And, then you start to like take more pride in how you look and how you eat, and you start to feel good, and it just kind of snowballs from there. Like there's just nothing bad that can come from that.
And you mentioned before that when you did well in the early event, you were really surprised.
Yeah.
Is that like, because you're just in your zone, like you focus
Totally.
on, you're not out there curious what other people's are doing and seeing if you're better, like you just do your thing.
Yeah, like what I was doing and the reason that I did it, and still to this day, like, I stumbled. Like I say to Maddie often, I call myself like the accidental athlete. Like I had no intention. I didn't watch something and be like, I'm going to go and be the best in the world. It sounds so corny, and I say to him all the time, like I hate saying it to people because it sounds fake, but I just wanted to be better for myself every day. It was just like, it was an internal, like a really positive addiction and drive forward and moving forward. And I just love that evolution. I love, finding ways to just live a better day. And that was doing it for me every day, because I would learn a new skill. It was incredibly frustrating. I would fail over and over again. And maybe I put it back to sometimes being an only child. I was kind of like that, figuring out things by myself all the time and moving forward. And then I was doing this constantly. And then, it was an accident because it wasn't my focus. My focus was on what I was doing in the moment. And, still at a competitive level, at a high competitive level, I want to win now, but it's still kind of not my everything. There's a lot of things that I get separately from it that are like personal development and evolution that are way more valuable than the win.
James, I was talking with James Newbury. He came up and visited us a few weeks back, and I said, how do you approach it? It was really interesting to see his mindset, because it's always nice to talk to, world-class athletes and sort of understand their mindset to how they approach things. And he said, for me, I'm not watching the guy or the leader in the next. I'm not focused on them. He's really internalizes and focus on his own race.
Yes.
And he says, and said pretty much the same thing to you. He says, look, this probably sounds a little cliche and all the rest of it, but literally I run my own race.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm just focused on performing and doing the best that I possibly can. It's not about so much whether I beat somebody else. He goes, and if I put in my and he said effectively, I'm probably paraphrasing James, so if you're listening, correct me if I've said it wrong, but he said, if I focus on doing that, I'm going to do my absolute best race, which means that whatever time I post, if that's good enough to win, it's good enough to win. If it's not, then it's not.
It's not, exactly. And then you go back to the drawing board and you work harder and you do it all over again. And it's so true. I get asked all the time, like, what's your why? And people want this like big magical story, like, oh, someone told me once that I couldn't, and I've lived my life every day for that person. And it's like, no, man, like I really like doing well. It's very, very internal. And I put a post up recently, and because people don't believe me, I don't know how many times I have to say it, I'm like, when I'm out there, I feel like I'm the only girl out there. Like I see my lane, and I have the very exact same approach that James says, and it's you focus on how you can execute and how you can deliver and provide your best self in that one moment. And then if you combine your best effort for all of these, like in the CrossFit Games, you might do 15 events. If I've focused on everything I can for just me in that lane, then I'm going to come out with something pretty cool at the end. That's what I truly believe. And I come back to, I've said this so many times, but my mum told me when I was learning to drive, if you focus on the oncoming traffic, if you worry about it, because I was really nervous at the start, she said if you look in the other direction, you focus on the other lane, you're going to naturally veer over there. But if you concentrate and focus forward on your own lane, you're going to stay in your own lane and you're going to keep driving forward.
Yeah.
And as a life principle, I've carried that through forever.
So true.
If I look to the right, I'm going to the right. If I look straight ahead, I'm going straight ahead. And so you focus on your lane, you can see what's happening, you can feel, and you can be in your athletic zone, and you're going to do your best. And either that is the best in the world, or maybe it's not. You get disappointed for a second, no big deal. Go back, work harder, and keep moving forward.
And as long as it's the best in the Kara world.
Yeah, exactly.
There's an analogy, and I don't know if you've heard it in the podcast before, and it's so funny because it came from one of the best life, business, sport advice that I ever heard. Actually came from a driving instructor.
Yeah.
Which is when I was at Willowbank and we had to do the defensive driving course for the company I was working for, and there was a barrier, and you had to come up. He'd blow a whistle. You had to brake, swerve to the right, then swerve to the left and miss the barrier. And literally everybody hit this barrier. And for those that have heard this story again, I apologise, but it's such a cool lesson.
Yeah.
And he came back and he goes, okay, so do you want to know a simple trick of how you actually get around it without hitting the barrier? He goes, don't focus on the barrier. Look at the space. Look at where you want to go.
Yeah.
And it's like, we all did it, and almost all of us got around that second time. And isn't that an analogy for life? Isn't it an analogy for success? Don't focus on the obstacles and on the things that are going to slow you down and stop you, because that brings in worry and fear and stress. But actually look at the opportunity, look to where you want to go, and guess what? You're going to hit that. If that's where you want to go, that's where you'll go.
Exactly.
Which is very similar to obviously what your mum said to you.
Yeah, and they're all transferable.
I've got some questions here.
Yeah,
I want
let's
some
do it.
goss. Okay. So, how is it that the top 2 women in the world come from Australia?
I know,
like
how cool
literally,
is that?
you guys, because you were born. Whereabouts were you from?
Brisbane.
Originally? So, and Tia Toomey.
Yeah, I'm not sure where she was born. She's in Gladstone now.
She's in Gladstone, so she's in Queensland as well.
Queensland, yeah.
So how's that? So we've got like number 1 and number 2 in the world.
Yeah.
And Tia's a lot younger too. She's only 20.
Oh, she's a couple of years younger. I'm going to say I'm probably wrong, but I think she might be 24, 25 at the most.
Yep.
But I'm going to say around 24 feels right.
And she's awesome. She's done really well.
Amazing, yeah.
And do you hate her guts?
Oh, of course, no. That's what everybody wants me
I
to
know,
say.
right? No, and I don't. And I'm just teasing, by the way, because again, it looks like, I mean, obviously James and Tia have got a good relationship. You guys do as well too. So, and you guys are competitors. But and I was watching the games with Tony because my wife absolutely loves it, and she was watching you and obviously cheering you on.
Yeah.
And it's really funny because you've won the Asia Pacific the regionals,
Pacific
like,
regionals, yep.
for as long as.
Yeah.
It's been around, right? But, so for the last 6 years, is it, or 7?
Yeah, there was 1 year, 2014, I came second, but every other year I've come first. Yeah.
And it's funny because Tony was watching you and she goes, oh, you look really relaxed, and it looks like your game plan is just to sort of pace yourself and just qualify and just do well, but it wasn't all out. Where when she was looking at Tia, it almost looked like, and I don't know, this is just an observation, so I could be completely right, that she was like, she was going to win this thing, come hell or high, and she was, and the interview came out as well too, and they're going, oh my gosh, Kara is so relaxed, she's joking around with people in the room, like you were just really enjoying it. Did you have a game plan? Not necessarily, well, it sounds like you've already answered the question before, not necessarily to win it, but just to put in a good performance and relax and stay calm and sort of keep your reserves dry for the other games?
Yeah, I think like the way I answered, it's probably a little emotional in the middle of competition when I was sort of asked this question last time, and it was a little bit misunderstood, unfortunately. But I'm going to
clear that up for you from the outside, but you go on, you make your point.
Yeah, totally. Like I love winning, so I say it all this time, like I don't go into a competition like I'm not going to try, right? Like, I'm just going to coast, it doesn't matter. Like I don't have that work ethic in me. I don't work, like I don't tick like that. But what has happened is I have won the Pacific Regional, and the slate is wiped clean after that stage. So they take the top 5 qualifying spots. I've won that regional over and over again. It feels really great and it's awesome. But what I did identify is I had a lot of changes in the last season. I started working with a new coach, even just before the last season, I had changed my nutrition. Like my whole life changed. I started a business. Everything was really different. And I decided that, I wasn't going to keep doing the same thing and have this focus on the same area. And I wasn't going to hold the same value on something that no longer meant anything to me on my journey. It just kind of like feels nice. It feels good on the ego for a second to win. Yeah, I get to stand up the top. But where my focus is at that final stage. So I was like, what I've been doing and the timeline and how I've approached that mentally and physically in my preparation has missed the mark where it really counts for me, which is at that final stage. Yep. So I spend a lot of time, preparing myself to use this regionals event as education, so that I could go into this final stage smarter. And this was like almost like a run through, which is something I'd never done before. I wanted to practice, I visualized how things were going to feel and how I was going to respond to certain scenarios. I was going to test taking risks at certain points and making myself feel a little bit uncomfortable and how I was going to respond. And it really was my last chance to educate myself about myself and this competition going into the one where it really counts. And I've never really taken the time to do that because that ego in me still wanted to win regionals. And so when I shifted, you know, what was important to me, and I was really honest with myself, and I realized I'm really happy with everything that I've done, but I'm not going to be okay one day if I walk away and I haven't tried a few more things, you know, like if I haven't done everything that I possibly can do. And when I looked at that and realized I haven't done everything I possibly can do, and okay, this is how I'm going to tackle this regionals. And, you know, I read the books leading up into it, and I had a very different approach. And in my mind, like, I came second this regionals, and this is very difficult for people to understand when they don't understand the internal satisfaction that I get from what I do. This was the best competition I've ever done.
Wow.
You know, from day one. So like I got a little sick on day one, and how I responded to that, I was so proud of myself. It was amazing, you know. And then how I continued to carry myself through the weekend, how I managed my nerves, how I responded to, you know, no rep calls and, you know, to errors was like on point, exactly how I planned out. So it was the most successful experience I could have ever had going into the CrossFit Games, you know, for the 7th time.
Yeah.
And no one's ever won a game at halftime anyway.
Exactly.
No, and that's right. This is just it's like a stepping stone.
Totally.
And, it's just, and I love the analogy that you use. It's like, okay, they're going to take the top 5. I'm not. Why potentially? And again, this is from the outside. Burn yourself out. Do something, you know, or not help yourself to exceed to your ultimate potential just to win that.
Sure.
When, as you say, the top 5 go through anyway, and then we start again. And this is where it really the money it hits the road. You know?
Look, this is my journey, and that's me as an individual. And then say you look at Tia as a comparison, who took that top spot. She's gonna be driven differently than I am. You know, she's Tia Claire, I'm Kara. We're two very, very different individuals. And maybe as part of her journey, you know, it doesn't mean just because she's gone hard and she's won regionals that now she's not going to do well at the games by any means.
And I don't mean that, by the way. Either.
No.
I'm just saying it's completely different.
Totally.
And she did whatever she needed to do for her game plan, which could be different from yours.
Exactly. And maybe for her, a part of her journey is that she needed to tick that box, and she needed to, you know, have that success at regionals, and that's going to build her confidence. And that's amazing too, because, you know, as an athlete, when I get to the CrossFit Games, I want to be against everyone, the best of the best at their best. Exactly. And so as two individual athletes, we've done what we know how to do best, and then we go there and we hope that we execute, and we hope that it falls in our favor, you know. And
I really want to clarify that was absolutely no dig whatsoever at Tia.
No, totally.
I appreciate that she's got her own game, and it was just, I was really talking about the contrast.
Exactly.
Where you need to follow effectively what works for you. And again, you've got that, you know, you've done it, you've been there, and you've done it so many times, and it's successful.
And you did it for you.
Exactly.
You did that this year, you did it your style.
Yes.
This was for you. It wasn't to screw with others.
And the two levels of competition, the events that they put together for the regionals and the events that they put together for the games are quite different. They, you know, the games events are quite out there, and they're a little bit longer, and you know, someone like Tia has classically been much better at those sort of games level events than I have. And so I really needed to take the focus away from regional style events, and I need to up my game. Like, I needed to work on those things for longer, and they're going to take away a little bit from what I could do at a regional level, hopefully so that I can stand there and, you know, give her and the other girls a run for their money at the games level. And so that's a choice that I had to make based off, you know, a deficiency that I've identified in myself.
There's something that Tony really got upset with as well too. When she put it out, I got a little bit upset too. You gave an interview mid-regionals talking about the fact that, and effectively it came off as though, you know, some people calling it disrespectful and sour grapes because you finished second, right? But you said your focus wasn't really on winning this games. That was done before the...
Yeah.
It was done after a couple of days. You still had, I think, 3 more events to go.
Yeah, there
right?
were... Yeah.
And so, and we're talking about this downstairs, that the haters and the trolls and the, you know, the other people who feel like they need to have an opinion about everything. So, yeah, I hope people out there listen. It's just like, I call them sheep with teeth.
Yes.
They're just a bunch of morons, seriously.
I think it's hard.
They give themselves an uppercut.
Yeah. It's really hard for people to understand sometimes that maybe when somebody says something, there isn't actually something negative to take from it. And I think, unfortunately, the way that some people are wired is that they are searching for something negative. They're looking for something bad in something that is not there. Yeah. And, you know, you take an emotional, and for me, myself, I'm very transparent. I always have been, and I'm incredibly passionate. You can tell by how much I talk, and like, I can't stop. I get excited about what I'm excited about. And you take an emotional athlete in the middle of competition and you have someone behind a camera pressing, and I'm going to tell you how it is. And in no way ever did I ever mean to take anything away from anyone else. I was just standing by. This is my focus. This is what I'm working in. And in my mind, I didn't even have a single bad intention or mean to disrespect anyone. So I didn't even hear it. And it wasn't until people search and try and find something negative that I'm like, oh, I can understand how that's come off, to the point where, despite the fact that I had no bad intentions, I take the time and I message a girl that actually won back in 2014 that, the message has maybe been misunderstood. Hey, if you've heard this, I'm terribly sorry. That's not what I meant. They've taken an emotional athlete. I've twisted my words, whatever it may be, but unfortunately I can't control how I'm received always, but I always sleep easy at night and I can look myself in the mirror because I know my intentions are good.
Yeah.
Yeah, other people's opinions of you, none of your business, really.
That's exactly
Especially when
right.
you're focused in on your goal.
Yes, too much energy that I can't control.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny because we're talking about social media and all the rest of it. Matt's pretty much all switched off. I don't even look at it really so much.
I turn it off because I was the same thing.
Yeah.
You just get these haters are going to hate, potatoes are going to potate.
Yeah.
You've got 90%
everywhere, mate.
Well, and again, most of the people that follow you, 95, 98% of the people
They're
that follow you
amazing.
are great, right?
Yeah.
And so they love you and all the rest of it. But it's funny. It's
They're usually the quiet ones.
they are
Yeah.
as well
Yeah,
too,
good,
or,
good.
or,
Yeah.
or put a like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then there's a few
Yeah.
more people that are nice, and you get those really nice comments.
Yeah.
And then you've got the people who
Want attention. They want your attention.
Yes.
exactly.
That's all it is. They
Yeah.
just want
It's like,
your
oh,
attention.
I just got
Yeah.
under I just got under Kara's skin.
Yeah.
Number one in Australia. Well,
Yeah.
number two. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
top athlete in the world,
Yeah.
and I'm getting underneath her skin,
Yeah.
and I've
Yeah.
actually been able to, and as I said before, it's to the ultimate. It's like that guy that shot John Lennon because he was famous, effectively. I mean, it's the kind of the same if you extrapolate it. It's that kind of thirst for attention. They
No
just
one's
Totally.
gonna
want
shoot
to poke.
you. It's fine.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
use analogies like
Just
that.
someone is out there waiting to shoot me right now.
That's pretty
But
much
what it
what
pretty
I'm
much
saying.
what happened.
Well,
And he's suggesting it's
character,
cheap.
maybe
Yeah.
maybe character
Can you please don't
assessment.
shoot me?
Oh, this is going to make front page newspapers, isn't it?
Yeah, I know.
But no, it is funny. But whatever those negative people are, they take strength and encouragement from the fact that they've got underneath your skin. Whereas if you don't even acknowledge it, move on to the next one, then hopefully it won't. And it
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
look. You're a professional athlete, so these things, it seems like it might upset you a little bit from time to time, but then
Yeah.
it's just it washes off.
For the better part, we're pretty resilient. Like my skin is pretty thick, but we are still human beings. And like when it comes to my character, like when somebody's potentially like threatening my character that I really pride myself on, I definitely will take that to heart, but it's short-lived. And what it does make me see is it makes me recognize the really good things around me and the good positive people around me. And it kind of brings them into the light a little bit more. So I think everything happens for a reason at the right time.
And you got your advisors as well too, and the people that you're close to. If they say,
Exactly.
"Hey, maybe that was a bit out of line," that's one thing. But if you
Yes.
just got some random that you have no relationship with trying to give you advice,
Yes.
like that's something else completely.
Exactly.
But
So how does it affect your sleep? I mean, so when you
Yeah.
go away for these World Games, I mean,
Yeah.
are you even going to look at social media during those 5 days? Like, is that the sort of thing you just feel like, man, I don't need this in my life right now?
Do you know what I use? I check in with myself.
Yeah.
So sometimes if I feel like I can look at it and I'm in a really good headspace and I feel like maybe I want to put something up, like I go by feel and my energy changes. And if I feel like I can do that and not be affected, then I'll have a look. If I feel like, oh no, it's a bit of a distraction, maybe I'm feeling a little bit vulnerable or a little bit tired and I could potentially look at something wrong and it's going to affect me negatively, then I won't. So I'll just base it for the better part. During competition, I'm not really going to look at it.
Because it's a potential stress. I mean, you really don't need. Yeah,
Yes.
so-
And there's a lot of things like that I cannot control and it can consume my thoughts. And, maybe that time thinking could be spent on the logistics of the next event that I always tend to stuff up somehow. So,
Yeah.
it's just about putting the energy and the focus on the right areas. And for me, the social media side of things like that does not hold a lot of value. So, I am human and we all tend to open our phones and look at stuff way more than we should. It's ridiculous. I hate it. I get mad at myself for it all the time. But for the better part during competition, I would rather just get rid of the thing.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I've really trained myself now. I probably look at Facebook maybe 2 to 3 times a week.
Yeah.
And I've got messages there and it's like, oh crap. I just say, look, I'm not going to get back to you. Call me if you need me. If you don't have my number, then.
Mate, when I deleted it, I actually started going around apologising to people after I deleted it because I didn't realise how often I would just, for no reason, just pick up my phone and press that little icon.
Yeah.
And like sometimes it was and when you had to log in or something rather than because I deleted it, it was like, and then for a couple of weeks ago, and it was situations like we'd be talking, I'd be with someone, I realised I just did this thing. I was like, man, was I that guy?
Yeah,
I was that person mid-conversation that would look at my phone like, oh my God.
And then it becomes like you're so accessible all the time. Like, unfortunately, how it's gone now is, you know, people think it's okay, you know, even as a business owner, to message you at like 9:30 at night, like on your messenger, which is just supposed to be like social interaction, like, hey man, I'm off the clock. Like, you know, that's not okay.
And once those messages have been seen, they can't be unseen.
I know.
Like you just sit there.
Well, it has been unseen and it can't be unseen. I love
Yeah,
it.
yeah, that's Facebook messages. That's what that's saying about, isn't it?
Once it's been seen, it can't be unseen. The funny thing is, do you remember the guy that we were with in the US at that trade show? What was his name?
Bradley Martin.
Yeah.
Bradley
and I mean,
Martin.
like, he's an internet sensation. I'm old, so I don't know who any of these people are. But nice guy, fit guy. He had a really great following as well too. And he said, man, I am a slave to this thing.
Yeah.
He basically said this has busted up relationships. You know, people have to understand this comes first, you come second. I'm like, what? And this, is that what it needs to be for you to be successful? And he goes, unfortunately, I literally am married to social media. He goes, that's all I've got time for.
Yeah.
And man, I couldn't imagine a worse hell.
No,
to be honest,
it'd be terrible.
To be held to other people's
in
opinions.
that little glass bubble the whole time as well.
Welcome to the ATP Project. You're with your hosts, Matt and Jeff. And today we've got Kara Saunders with us.
Saunders.
Oh my God.
Start again.
And we're with Kara Saunders. How are you, Kara? Kara Saunders, how are you?
Saunders.
Saunders. Oh my God.